So you're heading over to South Africa as well soon, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's gonna be a busy sort of next few months for me. I've got some leading tests. I was meant to referee Samoa Tonga next weekend in Auckland, and then fly over and do the third test, Australia versus France in Brisbane on the way over to South Africa. And then I'll head over to South Africa for the three test series versus the Lions, which is going to be incredible. So I'm doing the second test, and yeah, it'll be interesting. We had a meeting with the referees last night who were doing the lead up tests of the tour games. So Yako Piper, Wayne Barnes,
Wow.
they're all pretty excited about kicking it off. And yeah, it's a bit of a shame we're not over there right now. Normally the whole team would be together for the whole series, but they're flying in sort of two groups of teams. So for the leading games, and then us for the test series.
It's amazing. Well, I mean, I think it's completely well deserved. I like being a rugby fan, and I'm not saying it just because you're a guest. I reckon you're one of the best refs in the world. It's really um it's just a nice it's refreshing to have a ref just with your communication with the players and your common sense and I know for a fact that when I'm watching, if I ever am back in New Zealand when I'm watching the game with my mates at the pub, to like no one's got a bad word to say. It's great.
Oh, that's all
Um,
good. I appreciate that, Sam. It's definitely like I do feel like I'm in a space now where you need to learn a lot through all your games and your experiences, and that's how you do get better. And I'm sort of at a point now where I feel like I understand the game really well, and I can just use sort of my communication and the stuff that I feel like I'm strong at on the field a bit more. But yeah, there's certainly been some up and down games for sure. But no, I appreciate those comments now.
so and all the more better that you're from New Zealand as well. So where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up in Blenheim and Marlborough, so down south of the wine country, and went to school at Marlborough Boys and played my footy down there before heading down to Dunedin to spend a bit of time at university and then pick up the whistle down there. So sort of getting around the traps really in New Zealand, but it's a beautiful country and it's a great place. Obviously, when we travel, we do a lot of travel. It's good to come home to here.
My only experience with Marlborough Boys is did you ever play indoor cricket at school? I know that they're a massive indoor cricket.
Yeah, yeah, big cricket school. I never played. I only played social indoor cricket, but we had a decent team. So I'm hoping you say that we bet whoever you played for.
I like my like cricket. The extent of my career was and probably the highlight of it was the year 9 and 10. So like standard 3 and 4
Yeah.
indoor cricket competition in Christchurch, and there's only 4 teams in the South Island tournament, and Marlborough Boys were the like outright favourites, and we lost all three pool matches. I went to Southern Boys, being from
Yep.
Invercargill, and we played Marlborough Boys in front of essentially what was a home crowd, uh, and we beat them. So
Oh, really?
that was probably my pinnacle of my quite disappointing cricket career. But yeah, that's amazing. So you're from a
Yeah,
small town.
I don't think we heard that cricket result at the Friday Assembly. So I think they just sort of washed that under the rug.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was a highlight of mine. So
Oh,
so
nice one.
you went to school down Dunedin way. You like university?
Yep, yep. So after Marlborough Boys, a lot of my mates went down to university, and I really wanted to sort of get into the medical field. My careers advisor in sixth form didn't think I should, but I decided that I wanted to do it because I sort of felt like that's what I wanted to do with my life. So I went down there and did my 5 years of med school, and then my last year at med school I finished it up in Wellington at the hospital there, and sort of just been working since then, and then went full time with rugby a few years after that, and sort of been juggling a bit of both, and doing a few clinics. When I'm back in New Zealand, which has been more often over the last few years because often would be traveling overseas so much that we just wouldn't be able to work when we get back home. But I've been able to sort of keep my hand in it recently, which has been quite nice. Been a good break from rugby.
Wow, that's really interesting because I know it's pushed on players quite a lot to think about what they want to do outside of rugby and how important it is to get an education, and sort of set themselves up for a career post sort of performing on the field. But you sort of went the opposite way, right? Like you picked up refereeing like through education. Did you ever think realistically it would become your job?
No, I had no idea. So I'm really fortunate in that space because it was really, I went to university. I trialed for a team. I trialed for the varsity university and their varsity club, and I was terrible. I was like a second five centre trying to play with all these like top class guys. So I got sort of spat out pretty quickly. And then my dad, when I grew up, he refereed. And so he refereed in Marlborough and like did some good rep games in Marlborough. He might have even refereed like Southland versus Nelson Bays, way back. But back
Like
then I was just sort of
Southern
like,
Stags?
yeah. But back then I was, just like the water boy or, the ball boy, and, I'd be there for the chips after the game, really. So I never really watched him as if, this is what I want to do one day. Because, when I was a kid, I just wanted to be an All Black, and that's kind of what everyone
Yeah,
grows up with.
absolutely.
But it wasn't. So he said, like, when I told him, like, I'm not really that keen on playing anymore. I'm not that it's not that much fun. He said, look, you should give refereeing a go and give it a crack. There's a little bit of a pathway there now. So I did, and it was really just to keep in the game. It was really just to be able to. I still love rugby and enjoyed it so much that I wanted to stay involved some way. And that's why I just picked up the whistle in Dunedin. It was really an outlet that I had from my sort of studies during the week, and then being able to go out with mates and referee a game and hit the club rooms afterwards and enjoy a yarn with some of the players.
Nice. Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense that your old man did it as well. It's pretty cool that you decided to pick it up yourself. How does that look like initially if you're wanting, if there is like a 16, 17-year-old wanting to start repping in the regions like Otago, Southland, who do they contact? What's the pathway?
Yeah, like the pathway, Sam, is pretty similar to, I guess, what players would do. Players would play club rugby, and then their coach would probably put their name forward for higher honours, and it sort of just goes up like that. So good example, like in Southland or Otago, there's referee associations in both those regions, and so you go to the meeting, and then they set you up with a coach, and then you'll start getting games, and you'll start refereeing, maybe under 15s, or you might start refereeing under 18s Colts, and then you'll do your time there, and you'll actually just learn about the game, and because you watch a game of rugby, and if you don't notice the referee, that's fantastic. That's what we all aim to do as referees. But there's a lot to do in terms of positioning, where you're standing, what you're looking at, how you're reading the game. So it does take a bit of time just to learn those things. But once you do that, and once you've got the support of like the union around you, and then it starts flowing really nicely, you start getting selected for like they used to have under 16 and under 18 rep tournaments. So the same tournaments that the players would go to make the South Island zone squad or the South Island squad or the New Zealand secondary schools, those referees at those tournaments are ones that have been selected to be looked at by New Zealand Rugby. So then they'll be selected, and they'll go and do Heartland, then they'll go and do Bunnings NPC, which it is now, and then Super Rugby in Test matches. So it's really just about you're seen by selectors. If they like what they see, they'll select you for the next level, and then you keep going up like that. So much like the players, except it's less likely that we're going to get injured while we do it.
So is it just a case of like burying, as you're saying, like going along to these meetings and sort of burying yourself in those rule books, or as you say about like positions and things, is there often not another way to learn other than actually going out and doing it?
Yeah, that's the one thing that we have as referees, which the players have on top of us, is that they get to train during the week with their whole team, so they can do their backline moves, they can do their set piece moves. Whereas referees, it's quite hard. We've just got ourselves really. So the majority of the time, our practice is when we have to perform, which is quite tough. You're trying to learn as you go. So that's why I've always when I've mentored younger referees, and they're really keen, they're chomping at the bit to try and get selected, to go to higher honours. I'm just like, look, do your time, cut your teeth a little bit in terms of club rugby or the games that you're doing where no one's watching, because you learn from your mistakes. But apart from like putting your head down in a book, going to those meetings, getting mentored, watching yourself on video if you get to, you do, like I did a lot of work when I was younger, and I still work really hard now on doing what I can. I go down to the field, I practice on my positioning, I put cones out. I look a bit stupid for everyone that's walking their dog around me, but really it's just a lot of visualization and mental skills around, okay, I'm in a game, I'm at a scrum, what am I looking at, what are my pictures? I'll get home, there'll be lots of clips I can look at from the weekend Super Rugby or internationals, and I'll pause when they're going to the TMO, and I'll role play. Okay, if I was doing this scene, if I was in the middle, how would I handle this active foul play? So I still do that, a lot of that now, but when I started club rugby in Dunedin, I did a lot of that as well when I was younger. So there's definitely a lot of resources available. And while, yes, the majority is in the weekend, there's a lot of stuff you can do during the week as well. So not just putting your head in the law book and running kilometers, but some really cool stuff that, if you have good mentors and good coaches, just like players, you can certainly achieve it.
Is there quite a lot of competition when it comes to reffing? Like, is it like rugby where, you got thousands of people playing initially, and then it just gets harder and harder as you go up? And what's the normal time frame, progressing from, like, let's say a club ref up to the All Blacks? Like, I know you have been quite unprecedented in your rise up to international reffing. How did you find that?
I think there is, as I said before, like with the young guy, there is competition, because there's only, for example, at the moment, there's only 5 professional referees in New Zealand. We have a national squad of about 20 males and females. So, there are a lot of referees in New Zealand that are trying to vie for those spots. Of course, there is competition. But as I said, the progress of, I would rather, like it takes a little bit longer, and then you can hit the Bunnings NPC running or the Farah Cup running and referee really well, than actually get there too quickly. And then you're actually learning while people are watching, while you're on TV, and you can drop out pretty quickly as well. So I've always reinforced the idea around, like, spend a lot of time learning and understanding the game, and then the rewards will come to you after that. So while there is a pathway to progress, I think historically it was quite competitive, because you always thought, okay, I'm going to this tournament, I need to referee the final. Only one person can do that, therefore I need to be better than that other person. So I can't help them. But what I've realized, and I think what the generation of referees realize now, is that we're only one person. So the only way that I'm going to get better is actually talking and discussing my philosophies and reviewing my games with other referees, so the other 4 professionals in New Zealand. And I know, like at the national squad, there's a much bigger ethos around team, and actually discussing decisions and discussing, where would you stand at this line out at this part of the game? How do you deal with in-game decisions? Because that's really where you get all your other information from. Because I think a lot of people realize that, yes, you can only, you've got 80 minutes, there's an opportunity at 80 minutes, but actually there's a lot more opportunity outside the 80 minutes to discuss with more experienced colleagues at the same level, and even younger colleagues. I still, I'll mentor a lot of referees, and they'll ask a few questions. I'll think, I haven't actually thought about that, and that's something that I've implemented into my game. So I think, and I hope that the competition nature there within referees, well, I think competition's healthy because it drives you to be better. I think it stopped us from trying to climb over each other to get those final appointments, because we realize that it is a long game, and if you referee well, then I think you'll be selected, and because there's a definite pathway there in New Zealand.
Is there that much collaboration that does go on, and networking between your colleagues week to week, or is it sort of just like group chats and stuff, or are you actually around each other quite a lot?
We are, fortunately. I think with what happened with COVID, everyone got so used to, like we are with on Zoom. So teams are in the same environment, so they, the Hurricanes live in Wellington, so they can always get together. But the group of professional referees in New Zealand, and I guess the wider national squad, live all around New Zealand. Down to Southland, all the way up to we've got referees up here in Auckland and Northland. So with the Zoom and everyone being comfortable with these conference calls, we have been meeting, and the professionals have been meeting, twice a week. So on Monday we meet as a team to review the weekend, and on Tuesday we talk about, okay, what's happening this weekend. So we'll spend a few hours talking about the reviewing, talking about the philosophies of the weekend, learning, discussing, debating, reinforcing our ideas around what we're seeing from the weekend games, and then implementing that with the wider the national group within New Zealand, because I think the collaboration is really important. There's been a lot of referees, excellent referees in New Zealand, around the world, that have gone on and retired, and unfortunately we sort of lose that experience. So that's what we're trying to do, and I really feel strongly about trying to pass on my experience, because what I've learned isn't written in a book. You learn it over time. You learn it through games that you have, mistakes that you make, what the media says, all that kind of stuff. So I wish that the knowledge that I have now, I wish I had that when I started. So
Right.
because I didn't have that, mainly, I'm going to make sure that the next person has at least what I've learned, because I feel if I can give that knowledge of what I've learned, then they're going to be a much better referee than me. And that's what I really want. I want the next person to be better than me, because then that's better for the game as well. So, kind of going back to that competition, really, I think the mindset around rugby is actually we want to do it for the game and the players. So we got to try and get it right for them.
At the end of the day, you all love the game, right? Like that's the main thing. Is it quite stressful though to be performance based?
Yeah, it is. Like performance, high performance sport. You talk to any athlete, and I'll put us in as referees. We have to make decisions that have outcomes and are based on whether you can actually make the right decision in that moment or not. So of course it's stressful, and I think if you don't accept that, then it makes it harder to deal with. But that's what drives us, I think, to get better, Sam. Like we know that we have an effect on the outcome of games, so we actually want to benefit those players in games so that they can actually showcase their skills. So if we can do that, then we know that we're actually performing in a high performance environment, and we can only do that by getting better, by training harder, by working harder at our craft, and then we become more comfortable in that environment.
Yeah, that's such a good attitude to have. How do you deem a refereeing performance to be like successful, or for you to have things to work on, and how do you then work off that?
Yeah, it's hard. Like I think as referees, we try to. I think there's a myth that you can have the perfect game. Like I think what we thought about the perfect game is that you never make an error, but that just doesn't ever happen. We just like players. Players knock the ball on, players throw a forward pass. They never intended to do that, and we're the same. We do make errors as referees in every single game. But what we want to try and do is limit the impact of those errors, so that when we come off the game, like the ideal situation, I guess if you could say the game went perfectly for the referee, is that the referee set really good boundaries, set good standards that the players were aware of really early on. The players then were able to stay within those standards and boundaries because they're acceptable for that match. And the outcome of the game was determined by the players playing the game of rugby. And actually, you never really noticed the referee at all, because the spotlight was never on the referee because they never made an error, or the spotlight was never on the referee because they were never having to deal with something that impacted the game negatively. But actually, the players walk off and they go, "Wow, that was a really good game." And look, we weren't good enough to win today, or actually, yeah, we won that today, and we won that because of how we've trained and what we've actually played on during the week. And I reckon 80% of games are like that. There's only the very few games where potentially at the end of the game, referee might make an error, or we review a game, we might have given a wrong yellow card, or might have even not given a yellow card when we should have. So that's why the importance of review is so that we can actually limit and mitigate those things from happening. Because if I look at myself now compared to 5, 6, 7 years ago when I was first went professional, I think those errors are getting a lot smaller. Where now I feel like I'm in a lot more control of a match, and I think you can see that with the players. They can flow, and I understand sort of what the intent is from the players a bit more than probably when I was fresh out of reading the law book.
Is it pretty humbling? Like once you start actually having to look at your own performances and criticize, or not criticize it, but like look at what you do right and what you did wrong, and then build from that, and have colleagues do the same. Is it quite difficult? Like basically reviewing yourself. It must be humbling.
Yeah, like it's I guess I don't really see it as myself. Like when I'm reviewing the game, yes, I'm watching myself run around, but I'm actually looking at the decisions and, was that the right decision? Was that clear and obvious? And I'll go through all my decisions, go through all my non-decisions, go through how I set up the scrum, how I set up the line out, the big high impact decisions. Did I firstly give the right outcome? But how was the process that I got to it, working with my TMO, how I explained it to the captains? So all those things, I'm actually looking at the detail rather than looking at myself. Okay, because what can I do better for next time? So it's actually not nice a lot of the times reviewing games, because you want to review it because you want to get better. And then you'll see things that you think, oh, I actually worked hard on that and I didn't do that correctly. Fortunately, that didn't impact the game, but I need to change that for next time. So you're just constantly fine tuning your game and what you're doing. And I guess the difficult thing is that you prepare so much for a situation that has happened in previous games, but I guarantee you that in the next game they never happen quite the same way. A high tackle last week, even though it's pretty similar to a high tackle that I'll get in a few weeks, it's always slightly different. Like there might be a little bit of the players falling this time, or actually there's more of a tucked arm this time. So you do have to change. You got to work on your structures and your foundations, but at the end of the day, you got to look at the big picture as well. So, like it's good. I mean, I reckon there's been a few games where I've been able to just sit back and watch, just to enjoy it, because obviously you're constantly trying to review and get better. But I remember, some of the World Cup games that I've done, before I reviewed it, I just sat back and watched it, and I remember that being pretty cool. Because at the end of the day, I love rugby. I'm sure every referee loves rugby that is doing the game. And I think, as I say, like watching the game, I probably ruined it for all my friends and families, because they probably just like see the referee now rather than being able to watch a good game of rugby.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Let's talk about this week. Like this is going to be recorded post the All Blacks Tonga game, but you've been sort of deep into refereeing the Super Rugby for a couple months now. How do you then adjust into the international environment, and what does this week look for you?
So like this week is a little bit different because I've sort of been thrown into it last minute. Now I don't mind that, because I feel like I was told when I was younger, you want to get to a position when you're refereeing at a level that you're at, that if they woke you up at 3 a.m. in the morning and told you go out and you had to referee the Highlanders versus Blues, would you be able to do it?
Right.
And I feel like I'm kind of like that at Super Rugby, where if I had to, I would. But and that's why this week, like refereeing the All Blacks versus Tonga, I found out on Wednesday, so I'm going to referee on Saturday. Well, I've just got to go. Okay, my normal week would look a lot different, but okay, what can I do over the next 3 days? So a lot of my week is normally about like front loading the front part of my week with all my theory and my prep around the teams, around my philosophies around tackle, ruck, scrum, line out, foul play. And then I slowly sort of streamline it so that by the Friday, I've done all my work. And Saturday morning, I'll wake up and I'll have a clear head, and I can just go out and just referee with absolute feel, and knowing I've done all the work in the background. So I've got all that confidence. So thinking about, okay, what I'm going to try and do now over the next 3 days, I'm going to try and do the same thing, but it's just going to be a bit more condensed. And I really like that challenge. I think I'll be able to do that really, really well. That's why before this call, I was out doing my field session that I'd normally do, a few days before, and I'll do a little gym session tomorrow and then go through all my theory. And then Friday, I reckon I'll be ready to go out and referee it again.
Let's break it down. Like what does actually go into like a theory session for an All Blacks game? What are you looking at?
Well, so for any test match, in fact, any game, like I'll always preview it the same way. So I have my, like, I guess what I call a blueprint of how I referee each phase of the game, and that blueprint's like a live document. So, for example, tackle, and that document over the years has sort of started as 3 pages, and now it's sort of like 1 page, really quick, really fine detail. Around my philosophy now. And if I think I showed it to you, Sam, or I showed it to you now, the referee, they probably wouldn't even understand it, because it just makes sense to me. And it's really just me going through the years of, okay, for example, maybe 3 years ago, I gave a lot of holding on penalties, but I wasn't very good at seeing that the tackler hadn't rolled away. So I picked up on that being a trend over a few games. So therefore, I add that to my blueprint, and I start focusing on, okay, I need to add that and just be a bit more accurate around that part of the game. So what I'll do is I'll go through my tackle blueprint, then I'll bring up some clips on tackle, and then just go through like a lot of visualization in my mind. Then I'll go through my foul play blueprint, go through that detail, and then I'll bring up some clips of recent foul play that's happened over the last few weeks, that I haven't actually seen before. So often I'll look at the we have a online system, top 14 or premiership, and I'll just click on foul play, and I'll just play some scenarios, and then pause it, like I said before, and then go through my process. And it's just really reinforcing what I'm trying to do. And then if I get that in the weekend, then I know I'm really well prepared. So that's a lot of the theory stuff that I'll do during the week, and that might take a day, 2 days to do. So I'll really try and focus on each part of the game. Then I'll watch a few games of the teams that I'm refereeing. So before Super Rugby games, my last game was the Blues versus Force. So I'll watch how the Blues played in the weeks before, and the Force as well. And really, I'm only just watching to see things that the teams do that might catch me out by surprise. So particular moves that they do in the back line, particular moves they do at the line out, I'll look at those things so that I know where should I stand to actually be out of the way, but also so that I can be in the best position to make good calls. Gone, I think, are the days of when you actually watch particular players like at a scrum, because you're watching a scrum, a loose head versus a tight head of two players that are in different teams, and they might not even be playing this week, and also they're playing against a different opposition this week. So that kind of stuff doesn't really help me. So every game, I really just go out with my blueprints, my philosophies, and I put it onto that game and see what's in front of me. And generally, I know that if I do that, I can be consistent rather than trying to chop and change every game. So actually, I'm using like all the years of experience up until that point for that game, and I'll learn from that game, and then I'll use all my years experience for the next game plus the last game, and just keep building like that.
So I assume your preparation will look slightly different going to South Africa and refereeing the Northern Hemisphere players. How do you find the style differ between Southern Hemisphere teams and Northern Hemisphere teams, and what's your preferred one, if you have a preferred one to ref?
Yeah, that's a good question. The thing for me is my preparations are exactly the same. So I'll still do the same thing. I'll still try like if I'm up north doing Six Nations, I'll still find that field on a Wednesday that I have to run on. Sometimes I've been, the back of a college field somewhere with, snow around the outside, but it's still part of my preparation, and I'll tick those boxes. But I'll still go through those blueprints of my line out and my scrum. And it just means that in the weekend, potentially I'll be refereeing more line out to maul than I would be that I was used to maybe refereeing down at Super Rugby in New Zealand. But because I've done all the work during the week, I'm actually ready for whatever the teams throw at me. Because I know, like when you go up to Six Nations, yes, you do referee more line out to maul. Potentially 5 meters out when you have a scrum, they're actually really scrumming to get a pushover try, or also just scrumming for penalties as well. Like holding it in there, trying to beat the opposition until one team sort of cracks. But that preparation, even though, for example, if I was refereeing a rugby championship game in the weekend, I would have still done that same preparation around the 5 meter scrums and line out to mauls, but potentially I wouldn't be using as much in the rugby championship than I would be in Six Nations. So while there's different styles, I think as referees, it's really important that you prepare for anything, so that when you go out on the weekend, you're ready for that. And look, you might get clues around what teams try to do more of when you watch them in previous weeks. That may give you a clue on what you may be looking at. But honestly, what I've learned is that every time that you try to think this is how a team's going to play, they do it something totally differently, and they have an amazing game. And like, I love refereeing rugby championship games, but I also love refereeing Six Nations. So I was really disappointed this year when they just kept the Northern Hemisphere referees up there, obviously with all the travel restrictions. And I totally understand that, obviously, but there's nothing like, walking to Principality Stadium, Wales versus France, and, you actually walk to the stadium from the hotel with your bag, and all the pubs are full. You get into the stadium, the roof's closed. There's probably more French supporters than Welsh supporters because they've got such a travelling group with their Six Nations rugby, and those games are pretty special. but to be fair, doing any international is we're pretty lucky to be doing it.
Do you find when you're reffing those internationals, like if you are standing in the middle for Wales, France, there is such a performance increase as opposed to like, let's say you're doing Crusaders Blues or something like that. Is the pace of play increased, or is it just the quality of players? Like how does it differ?
Like, to be honest, it's probably just the external stuff that differs a lot. So, probably the number, the amount of people in the crowd, the amount of people watching the game. You're getting two countries watching games versus two regions. And then so therefore the media attention post match is a lot more, because once you actually get into the game, like like a Crusaders versus Blues, the players, they're all Blacks, so the skill level is extremely high. And then you referee even, Scotland, Ireland, like, wow, the skill level was just as high there. So really the game, and I remember making that transition from, NPC to Super Rugby. Like, I didn't really notice, and there is, of course, a lot more speed and skill, but I didn't really notice that as much as I noticed the media and the crowd and all the external stuff, the environment. So that's what I'd say for those big games.
Do you find that
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Do you find that the players try to test you as well? Like, do you think like in the first 5-10 minutes of a game, you get like the big, like the All Blacks or Wales, or that they sort of try and push your boundaries and sort of see how much that they can get away with?
Oh, of course, and that's why that's why they're international players. Often most of the players are captains within their own club teams, so they know all the tricks.
Right.
But I always remind them that it's been done so many times to me as well that I don't really, sort of I get like a Rory Best come up and be an absolute gentleman to me before the game and during the game, and like while he is, I'm like, yeah, mate, I know what you're trying to do, and then I get a big Alan Wynne-Jones trying to do the same thing, towering over me and then coming down and trying to talk to me nicely. And I know exactly what he's trying to do as well, but they all have their own great styles, these captains, and I think it's a fantastic part of the game. But I think early on they soon realised, all right, we're back to this worrying about the team now, and this ref's in control.
Nice. Let's keep it on the field for a bit. What's been one of your like most memorable moments, whether it's an All Blacks game or whether it's like your first NPC game, or what's been a standout for you from in the memory banks?
Oh, I'm lucky. Like over a few years, I've really I love every game that I do, and then I do the next one. I love that even more. So yeah, you talk about my first NPC game was at Eden Park. It was Auckland versus Bay of Plenty, and back then I wasn't a professional, and for me that was the pinnacle. Refereeing a game like that, it was like a first TV game, and I really felt like it was a huge achievement for me, without knowing whatever was going to happen in the future. And then since then, I think getting to a World Cup, while I never knew that I was going to be refereeing at that level, and it didn't really become apparent until maybe 3 years before the World Cup that potentially I'd be in the position to go. And then just thinking of me being in that position was pretty amazing. And then you don't really know until once I finished my last game, I could reflect on those 3 games. I really felt like that was a huge achievement for me, because once you're in the tournament, it's a massive roller coaster. So you don't actually want to stop and reflect because you're actually in the moment. So when I walked off the Japan versus Scotland game, I was at Yokohama Stadium. So it was the last pool game. It was basically a quarter final. The winner of that game went through. It was the host nation.
It was incredible. I
really felt like I did a great job. And so I came off, and once I blew that final whistle, it was just massive relief. And I thought, wow, that was a pretty special moment in my life, that game.
Has there been like a standout player that you've reffed this year? Well, and it could be based on like their character as well, like someone that has really surprised you, whether they're young or you just haven't reffed them too much, or whether it is just performance based. Is there someone that's really been a standout player?
Yeah, we've been quite lucky in New Zealand. We've had a tough Super Rugby Aotearoa, and we had some awesome first years play. Garden Bashop in Dunedin for the Highlanders, and unfortunately he was robbed with a bit of injury. Ethan Blackadder, the Crusaders, he's really come on, and obviously he's made the All Blacks now. So And then you look at just like, the older guys like, Aaron Smith and Patrick Tuipulotu, and those guys, they've just been there for so long, and but they're still just performing at the top level in New Zealand. So when you referee, and and mainly when you review games, you see what those players do and what they're achieving. It's pretty special. How they're sort of at that top level, and they'll go on and represent their countries and be absolutely fantastic as well. So for me, I mean, there are only a few standout players. I just think in the competition that we have in New Zealand, we're just so lucky because it kind of makes our job easy as referees. You have such a high caliber of players. They really take control of the game for you. They don't knock the ball on a lot. They don't throw those bad passes. They can do the moves that they've coached in the back line. They can pull them off and score amazing tries in the corner. So as a referee, when you can just blow the whistle and ward them and walk off, it's really great.
I have to ask this. So, like, you talk about like this, what players have been standouts. Is there certain players who are just more pests than others? I remember your moment with Dane Coles this year when he's just like, oh, ref, we're just trying to have a bit of fun. Is that just all in good spirit, or do you think he's just a pest?
No, I think it's all in good spirit, and I mean that whole moment really came by surprise because I think he was sort of smiling as he said it, but I was sort of in that zone of hold on, like I'm trying to sort this out. So I said something back pretty cheeky, and then it sort of just got it sort of just snowballed a little bit from there. But it was quite funny to look at afterwards. But I think like within the genetics of any halfback, they always try and rile you up a little bit.
Yeah.
But the problem is that in New Zealand, like all the halfbacks know the laws so well that 9 times out of 10 they're right. When they're actually hitting you up about something. So you've sort of got to get really good at deflecting or just even saying, yeah, sorry, I missed that one. And then generally when you say that, they sort of move on and feed the ball into the scrum.
Yeah, they constantly feel like they're trying to work over the ref or trying to spend 80 minutes of just getting on your good side.
Yep, and I think that's good on them. That's part of their job. And I think if I was playing, I'd be doing the same thing to the referee as well. Because I've never seen a referee properly change their mind because of a player. I reckon there's no harm in sort of staying on that edge with them.
Nice. I've just got like a few sort of, they don't have to be quick fire questions, but just a few questions that I've written down out of my own curiosity. What's your most favourite stadium in the world that you're refed at?
I think my most favourite would be Murrayfield, Edinburgh. I love it because I refereed my first Test match there, which my first Tier 1 game, which was Scotland versus Argentina, and I've been there a few times for Six Nations and other games, and it's full. It's just cold there. It's pretty. There's a bit of fog that sort of settles down in the stadium. They have the piper that pipes the national anthem on the roof. It's just pretty cool. It's a really cool city. So I'll put that up there. But I'm trying to compare that with Twickenham. I'm trying to compare that with Ellis Park,
right?
Yokohama in Japan. Some of the stadiums in Argentina, Stade France, and Paris. They're all pretty amazing stadiums. So yeah, it's pretty hard to split them between all those stadiums around the world that we get to referee at now. But yeah, I think Murrayfield always just is a bit more special for me.
Nice. Rugby Park in Invercargill. That's a great answer.
Yeah. I don't think I've actually had the pleasure of refereeing. No, I have actually. Yes, I remember that because they need to get a big screen down there.
Yeah, they do.
Because I remember getting down there and there's no big screen. I thought, I feel really sorry for my TMO tonight.
Nice. Would Edinburgh be your favourite city that you've been to refereeing? I assume Paris would be pretty phenomenal. I've been there a couple of times and it's amazing. But is there certain countries or cities that you guys get treated just amazing in?
Yeah, well, I mean, the rugby community is amazing everywhere. Because it's like on a golf course. You meet people that play golf. You've got something in common. So you meet referees. You got something in common. They look after you. So no matter where you go, as referees, we get looked after. For me, a really special place that I love is Cape Town in South Africa. It's just such a beautiful country, and you get to do some amazing things there. It's really good. But I think probably one of the best test weeks to go to is if you're doing a Six Nations game in Rome.
Wow.
So you're refereeing at Stadio Olimpico. I think my last game there was Italy versus Scotland. So you're flying on the Monday, you got the whole week there. So you do all your prep and your training. But unlike teams, we get to manage our own week. So I
Nice.
can decide, okay, this is what I need to do for my week, and
Yeah.
this is when I'm going to do it. So you definitely you take a Wednesday off. You on a Thursday, you go and explore the city and
Yeah.
yeah, and it's just that time of the year. It's always been amazing. So definitely Rome's right up there. But yeah, as I said, we're very fortunate before COVID getting to travel the world, and hopefully we're starting a bit more of that now.
Nice. Yeah. Rome's incredible. What's one of your bucket list fixtures that you haven't had the chance to ref, and like you've almost done it all? Like the British Lions one will be amazing. But did you do that in? I should have done my research better. But did you do that in 2017?
No, in 2017, I was refereeing in South Africa versus France. So we're doing the Test series when I was here in New Zealand. I mean, I think I came back as that series finished, and then the Test started here. So I was able to watch a few games, which was awesome because I never get to watch All Black games live because I'm always overseas, waking up in the morning to watch them, which was quite special of being able to obviously do the All Blacks versus the Wallabies last year with the change in referees that they had for COVID as well. So yeah, it's it was really good.
Nice. Okay. Another question I've got. Who's the
Sorry,
player?
but I don't think I answered your question. What was your question?
What was your bucket list fixture that you haven't that you haven't done? Like I sort of acknowledge that you've almost done it all.
Well, I think for me, the Lions is the next one because that I've never really thought of. I knew as a New Zealand referee, the biggest game that you can do because before last year you could never do the All Blacks. So some people would say that the biggest games in the world are like All Blacks versus England or All Blacks versus Australia. It's basically All Blacks with anyone.
Yeah.
So for a Kiwi referee, though, the biggest game that we could do is probably like South Africa versus Australia, or like Southern Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere. Like in Australia, England. Fortunately, like I've been able to do those, and then I've been able to do the Six Nations. I've been able to do Rugby Championship, but I was never really chasing games. I just wanted to referee, tier 1 Test matches. So when I got to go to the World Cup, for me that was incredible. And I think refereeing in the playoff games for me at a World Cup would be maybe the next goal. And then a few years ago when I realised that South Africa was having a Lions tour, them sort of a few years after I've been to a World Cup, and you can't have South African referees, you can't have UK referees either. So only got to be Australian. Yeah. I thought, well, potentially I'm in here. It was kind of like when England played South Africa in the World Cup final, and they were looking around at assistant referees. I sort of looked around. I was like, "Geez, I could be in here." So, so that's going to come up in a few weeks for me. And I think when I got the call from Joel, our World Rugby boss, I was just like, awesome. Like that's amazing. But I felt like I'd ref really well to put myself in a position to be selected for that. So I was more happier with how I'd refereed to get to that point, even if I didn't get selected. So that's definitely a bucket list that's going to happen soon. It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard. But I think, once I blow that final whistle after a second test, but also once I walk off the third test after being assistant referee, that's when I'll be able to reflect and maybe, hopefully be able to do the big tick.
Nice. Yeah, it's going to be very special. Yeah. That's going to be an amazing occasion. Just a couple more questions left. Who's the player that you've found to be like the fastest person to ref? Like you just you're like, Beauden Barrett, if he makes a break here, I'm just going to have to just put on my wheels and just run super fast. Or if it's like a Damien McKenzie, who's the fastest player that you've had to ref?
It's definitely it's Geordie and Beauden Barrett.
Geordie, right?
Yeah, and I know it was probably in that Australia New Zealand test last year. I think Geordie got a short ball and then just hit put the afterburners on and went and scored. And I know this sounds a bit silly, but referees have a little thing that if you award a try, you're not inside the 22. That's a massive. You owe the boys a drink back at the bar. I
Nice.
struggled, I think, in that game. And I think the assistant referees, he was in the middle of the field, so they weren't even watching anything. They just had their head down trying to get there as well.
Right,
I think
right. Nice.
we only just made it. We only just made it.
Oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't put Geordie up there, but it makes a lot of sense. Who's the one player that just can't shut up when you're refereeing him? It might not be bad, but like he just can't get out of your ear.
Oh, I think TJ Perenara. So it's been quite good. He's obviously been doing a really good job in Japan. But he's exactly like I said previously. You know, he just knows the law, and he's so smart that 9 times out of 10 he's correct in what he's saying. So you sort of have to, you sort of acknowledge what he's saying, and then move on to the next tackle ruck. But he's such a great and passionate player, and I'm really looking forward to. I think he's back in New Zealand now. So I really look forward to hopefully he's going to be involved next year and in games, because he's a big part of rugby, and I think for me as a referee, keeps me on my toes. I'm sure he does that for the other refs as well.
Yeah, nice. If you could change one law in rugby, what would it be?
Look, there's probably a few laws that I change. I really like some of the, I guess, the trials that we did in Super Rugby Aotearoa, because I think they made the game a bit faster, and they allowed the game to be sort of finished by the players rather than by the referees. But if I could make it really simple for us as referees, I'll just make the touchline law just easy. Like if the ball's out, it's out. At the moment, and I'm really, you really, as referees and TMOs, are really worried about these certain situations happening, but you can basically be standing out and still play the ball, and the ball, and it's play on. The ball's not out. You can be lying out in goal, and you can put your hand on the ball and score a try. So I think we haven't had those situations yet, and that's probably why the law hasn't been changed. But I just really feel sorry, and touch wood, it doesn't happen this weekend or over the next few months. There's going to be a situation like that happen, and the referee is going to have to explain to the world why that's a try, or why that's not out. And I think that makes it pretty tough.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time. I wish you all the best for this weekend and for the Lions series coming up. And it's just been a pleasure to catch up with you.
Easy, Sam, and thanks for getting me on, and hopefully catch up again soon.
Nice. Thank you.